going to talk about how sustainability is integrated into all of your business practices and how you communicate that to customers. So let's communicate the first thing, which is I want you to each introduce yourself with 2 sentences. Distill your single biggest win in sustainability in 1 sentence, and then your single biggest miss or challenge, something that you spend a lot of time unraveling in meetings in 1 sentence. So 2 sentences. Jonah, why don't we start with you?
So Jonah Smith, Global Head of Environmental Social Governance with Kraft Heinz Company, also the President of the Kraft Heinz Foundation. Pardon for my voice. 90% of my work is the ESG stuff, and then about 10% is the foundation work. Very difficult to answer that question and quickly, but I would say, because it's such a vast area, but I would say, we righted the ship on our manufacturing targets, so reduction of water, energy waste, and greenhouse gas emissions, where we previously missed on some of those targets. We righted the ship by embedding accountable KPIs with the right employees and colleagues, cross-functional sharing of best practices across our global footprint, smart investments. All those things helped us right the ship. So I said that's been a really big win for us.
Okay.
The most challenging area, again, difficult because there are several, but I would say packaging. We've got a commitment to be 100% recyclable, reusable, compostable by 2025. And it's extremely, we're making progress. We're about 84% of the way there right now today. But it's extremely technically challenging. You also have to do this a lot of times with partners, with our supply, our packaging partners. The packaging has to still meet all the specifications in terms of safety, in terms of performance, and all those things, shelf life, et cetera. So those demands are technically very challenging, but we're making great progress. We just launched a Pulpex paper-based Heinz tomato ketchup bottle. We also announced we're going to launch later this year a fully circular Heinz tomato ketchup bottle in Europe.
Okay, so packaging is on the to-do list. Manish, what about you? Biggest win and something that you're still working on?
I think the biggest win for us as a company in Chevron, we have been on this journey that we believe the future is lower carbon, and that includes us reducing our carbon intensity and then helping other customers as new energies to reduce theirs. So the win, which we have talked about publicly recently, is on the methane. It's a potent gas out there, and our own emissions of methane since 2016 have gone down by 50%. It's a huge shift. And that was before any of the government mandates. That was just us trying to reduce the thing. Challenges, I work in the new energy space, which is like hydrogen, carbon capture, and some of the geothermal offsets. I think the biggest challenge is we don't know where we as an industry are heading there. What could be the right solution set? So where I spend most of my time worrying about is, do I have the right mix right now? Or would this choice of investments still hold? Do I look smart in 10 years from now because of what I picked?
How about you, Niki?
Yeah, so big win for us. Unilever's been on this journey for quite a while now. We've really been leading in the area of sustainability for several years. And we just launched our Unilever Compass, which is the replacement of our Sustainable Living Plan a couple of years ago. And that plan is so robust and has so many targets, everything from decarbonization to plastics and people goals as well. So I'm very blessed that I work for an organization where sustainability is at the heart of everything that we do. What keeps me up at night is how we're going to achieve those goals. So just like Jonah said with packaging, we have very robust targets. We can't meet those targets unless the infrastructure in this country changes, and around the world, as a matter of fact. And, we're in this climate crisis right now, and we can't do this alone. And I think just the sheer fact that we need more people to collaborate, and we also need the customer and the consumer to really play a part in that as well. So that really keeps me up at night.
Okay, so that's a great segue to my next question. This is true or false, so it'll be easy, and we can kind of elaborate on when it's not the case. But true or false, sustainability determines what company or brand a customer will choose. Manish, true or false?
Maybe.
Maybe, that's not an option.
I think, and not to give a glib answer there, our customers are big institutional companies.
Cement companies,
steel companies, or companies in the oil and gas industry where we are helping them decarbonize. So what they are trying to figure out is, can their customers support the incremental investment which our customers need to make to lower their carbon footprint? So that's the maybe part of it. I think our belief is that many of the companies are going there, our customers are slowly going there. So the answer should be yes, but right now it probably is a maybe. How
about you, Niki?
I think true. I think consumers do care. I mean, if you look at studies that are out there, there was a Kantar report that said 94% of consumers want to live more sustainably. And so they're all concerned about the climate crisis. I mean, we've seen such a rise in that sentiment in the past couple of years. So absolutely, I do think consumers care.
Jonah, what about you?
I mean, I kind of like Manish's answer with the maybe, but you forced me to
a big asterisk.
You forced me to distill it to just a true or false. Absolutely true. I mean, but I would say it does vary based on where you are in the world. We're like right now we're like in a highly inflationary environment.
Yes.
There's war going on. There's all sorts of other supply chain issues. So people also have to be responsible about feeding their family and making choices. So there's balance there. But I would say absolutely to Niki's points. I've been doing this for 20 years in this space, and there certainly has been a paradigm shift over the past 2 decades. And you can look at not just studies, but actual stats, sales related to sustainable products in terms of the market share. It's just exponential growth for the past, it's like 10, 15 years. And also the premium that typically people are willing to pay, aligning their social values, environmental values with their purchasing power.
Well, this event is all about the customer, and we're focused on the customer, but I am curious about the other stakeholders that your companies serve. Stakeholders like investors, the board, for instance, employees, the local community. Are those stakeholders sometimes more out front than your customers or consumers in pushing for sustainability? Do you see that at certain times? Niki?
I think we do, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that we did last year is we created this climate transition action plan. And we were one of the first companies of our size to do that. And it really lays out our climate goals, how we're going to achieve those goals. It's our roadmap to decarbonization, basically. And we took that and we put it before a shareholder vote. We were very shocked to find that 99.6% of shareholders voted in favor of it. So
what did you think it was going to get?
Maybe 50%.
Really?
Yeah. So we were really shocked to have that 99% vote. And so to me, that shows that our shareholders really care, and this is important to them.
Manish, what about you? What do you think in terms of other stakeholders?
So I think the answer is that all of our stakeholders believe the future for energy is lower carbon. So there is no ambiguity around it. I think there is support.
Who's leading the way? Who's out front?
I think right now, to be honest, it's the policies leading the way, because that's what has led, if you look at it historically, the reason solar and wind right now are very competitive is because there's a lot of long-time policy support. So now that we have the scale to get the costs down. So policy is leading the way, but I think our investor base, like in case of Chevron, they believe that we have to be prudent in the way we proceed. So that does not mean that we stop investing in our traditional businesses, especially in the times like this, where there's a large cost because of the higher oil prices. So we have to improve production in a safe, reliable, and a clean fashion. At the same time, knowing the future is lower carbon, our investors expect us to start investing in developing that optionality too.
Especially if your investor base also shifts to include more investors who are focused on ESG principles than perhaps in the past. What do you see, Jonah? How have things changed? You referred to the fact that we're in an inflationary environment. Are other investors more out front, or is it still the customer driving everything when you've got an economy that's slowing down and possibly tipping into recession sometime next year?
Yeah, I still think it's a variety of stakeholders, and I agree. We just did updated our materiality assessment. We talked to a variety of stakeholders, whether it's suppliers, customers, NGOs, industry coalitions, customers, consumers, and so forth, and investors, and you hear it from everyone. But I would say that in terms of your question, it's really shifted again. I'm also actually a registered investment advisor. I did a stint in social responsible investing for a while. And it used to be more boutique ESG firms that were asking about ESG. Now we do investor engagement throughout the year, sometimes Q4 and Q1, a little heavy-handed. But it's not just boutique firms anymore. It's your big BlackRocks and your Vanguards and all these major investment platforms that are making ESG a centerpiece of their investment platform. Because why? Because they know that their clientele are asking for the same thing. So I'll bring it back to the consumers, but it's undeniable in terms of because that's kind of where it starts, like at the end result, right? Consumers, and then and then everything that comes to the value chain before that kind of like connects up back to that. But I would say that it's undeniable. Like climate science, it's undeniable. It's here. It's everywhere, and you have to address it.
Okay, so it's integrated into the processes, into everyone's mindset. I want to bring in a question from the audience, and thank you to whoever sent it in. Please continue to do so. How does the war in Ukraine affect sustainability? We mentioned inflation and how things are changing. The economy is slowing. What about Ukraine? All of you have global companies, work globally around the world. You have operations that are directly affected by what's happening in Ukraine and some that are less directly affected. Manish, do you want to take this one first?
Sure, and I think it's a great question. And the answer is not affecting our long-term goals. Because especially if you believe the future of energy is lower carbon, and it is a transition, right? It's not a switch. This energy industry has been in transition right from the whale oil, but used to use that to light up the streets of New York to where we are right now. So the transition is real. It is going to be lower carbon energy in the future. I think what the unfortunate conflict in Ukraine has highlighted is the importance of our traditional sources in this transition. You cannot wish it away. You have to be thoughtful about it, and that's exactly what we're doing. So there's no change in the way we are in our efforts, in our focus, or our investments in this area.
So no one said, let's go back and look at the plan and see if we need to make adjustments because of what's happening in Ukraine?
Not for Chevron, for sure.
Nikki, what about you?
I would say the exact same thing. No change. We're still focused on our goals, and the war has not impacted that.
Jonah?
Yeah, so I would say that, first of all, truly unfortunate what's going on, tragic in that area. But I would say that for us, we also look at it as an opportunity to kind of come back in and look at our long-term strategy. Challenging, tough times, it makes you look inward and see, make sure that your plan is robust enough to achieve what you need to achieve. So we absolutely look at that, look at the supply chain, look at in terms of impact on people, how do people get food security and access to it and everything else. As a global food company, we really feel it's our responsibility in some way to keep food on the shelves. So people can get food and everything else. But so we certainly look at all of our plans and our processes and try to optimize those, make them resilient, without compromising on our ESG agenda, right? So if if it means that we have to shift supply or something, we still have to have all the human rights governance. We still have to have all of the. Nikki talked a lot about climate change, and we announced our net zero ambition to achieve net zero carbon by 2050, having our emissions by 2030. We announced that last year. That's just one of many ESG agendas. All those things we still have to achieve. So we need to look at that and figure out how we do it in the still.
So you look at it as an opportunity to tweak what already exists and maybe make it better, make it
That's right.
more resilient, more robust.
That's right.
We have another question about investors. How do you combine sustainability versus corporate performance for shareholders? So I want to get to costs because that's going to factor in. That of course affects profit margins, and it also affects the expense line, and it attracts attention from the investment community. So reducing your carbon footprint, we've agreed, is the right thing to do. Customers want it, investors want it, but are customers willing to pay for it? And then are investors willing to pay for it? Let's start with the customer angle first. Nikki, what are the financial costs to customers when you incorporate sustainability into your products, into your services, into your operations?
Yeah, so when we look at the customer, I think sustainability alone is not enough to justify a price increase for a customer. There have to be other benefits. It's got to be superior quality. It's got to be innovative. It's got to be the brand that they want. And sustainability has to be incorporated into it. So the way we look at it, and our customers expect us to incorporate sustainability into our products. I mean, our purpose at Unilever is to make sustainable living commonplace, and that's been our purpose for a long time now. So that means for us, we have to build those sustainable attributes into our products. So a simple example, our Hellmann's brand, which has been around since the 1920s, one of the things that we've done is we've taken our mayonnaise jars, and they're now 100% post-consumer recycled plastic. So there, the customer didn't have to do anything. We made it easy for the customer, but it makes a massive impact. So that's...
And the cost is the same. Bottom line cost for the consumer
Yes.
is the same.
Yes. And that's just, I mean, we have those similar packaging goals to you, Jonah, and that's what the customer expects us to do.
Jonah, do you ever have to raise prices because the packaging is more sustainable?
You know,
Or shrink the amount of product in the packaging, shrinkflation?
Yeah, so I would say I agree with Niki. So like, you know, nowadays, again, it's changed quite a bit over the past 20 years, but nowadays, because of the opportunity to scale, so Kraft Heinz, because of our size, we can pilot things, right? And we can scale them. And at scale, you can bring price parity oftentimes. So it's really, what we're really trying to do, you know, one of our values is that we're consumer obsessed, you know. We really want, and actually going back to our history, you know, with one of our founders, Henry J. Heinz, you know, he has this famous tagline that says, you know, we really, you know, protect the product, but, you know, protect the consumer by owning the product all the way from the soil to the table. And so that's really what we do with ESG. We look at it from, you know, in our roots, like the entire value chain. And part of that is ensuring that the price is a price that's, you know, affordable and accessible for different, like I said, like, you know, access to food. So that's really part of our DNA, and we really try to achieve that with everything that we're doing.
So I think in a commodity business like ours, we don't get to set our prices like many of the other companies, right? It's what the market decides is the price for oil and gas in a particular day, right? So in that way, we do not have any pricing power in terms of what can we pass on. But having said that, from a broader perspective, our investors, our stakeholders, expect us to now start developing solutions that do lower the carbon intensity. Recently, we sold a cargo of liquefied natural gas paired with offsets. So in this case, the customer wanted a lower carbon product and was willing to pay for it. So that's where we are now starting to develop our capabilities, that this is where it comes back to the scale aspect of it. At the current scale, it does cost a lot more to produce lower carbon products. But as we grow, and that's our aspiration is, we will get that premiums down, and you know, you will get the same product for lower carbon product for no incremental cost.
That customer wanted it. Did others too? Was it
I think that's
singular?
So that's where the complexity of this energy system across the world play, right? You know, what is your end customer? If you have a country that has a deficit in energy, where they cannot provide, there are billions of people in the world right now who do not have access to energy right now. So it's difficult for that set of customers saying, I'm going to pay you more when I don't have enough right now, right?
Yes.
So that's where I think that's the bigger picture that at times gets lost, is there's still the large population, but they too don't want, you know, they want affordable and clean energy. And that's our focus right now, is to get to the point where people don't have to choose whether I take energy or I take clean energy.
All of you help run for-profit companies, so all of you are under pressure to deliver on quarterly targets, annual profits, all of that. To what extent do you get pushback, or do you hear of pushback from your investors about the costs? And this might not just be financial costs, it might be the time and the energy spent on sustainability efforts and initiatives at a time when the economy is not looking so great and things are going to slow down. Does that happen? Jonah?
Sure. So we talk to investors all the time. And by the way, investors come to us with a variety of ESG items on their agenda, asking us to update them. How are you doing on this? How are you doing on X? How are you doing Y? How are you doing Z? So they get it. You know, sustainability it's a journey. You look for smart investments. A lot of these things that you do, there's a positive return, whether it's immediate or it takes 5 years or 10 years or 20 years. There's a return on all these things. So
they're willing to wait the 10, 20 years for that return?
Well, do you want a company that's burns out in a year, and then you don't have that sustainable, what's called a dividend, for example? You have that dividend, the dividend goes away because you didn't invest smartly, or do you want to to have that in perpetuity, right? It's the latter for long-term investors. And so yeah, we'll on an annual basis, if we reduce our energy, we're going to reduce energy costs, right? Energy costs right now are skyrocketing, just like everything else. That saves tens of millions of dollars every year. That's shareholder value. There's other things that are embedded within it that maybe it's like not quite a direct corollary where it's like 1-to-1 in an annual basis, but maybe it's like 3 years or 5 years, like I said, related to all of our different ESG areas. Maybe it's human rights related. It could be risk related, right? It's risk management as well. So I could go on and on about this, but it's complex, but it's absolutely part of what our investors are looking for.
What about you, Niki? Unilever has attracted all kinds of investors, sometimes activist investors. Do they see sustainability as getting in the way of growing the company, growing revenue, growing the bottom line, or do they see it, when have you seen it described as sustainability as a driver for growth?
Yeah, I mean, the investor piece is not really my area of expertise here, but I mean, investors have different opinions. We've seen everything. We've seen investors push. We've seen investors question, but at the end of the day, we know that we have to have the right balance and meet the needs of all of our investors.
So I think for Chevron, we have a similarly very wide diversity of opinions among the investors, but our stated policy of higher returns, lower carbon has been warmly embraced. I think when we rolled out our new Chevron New Energies as in a big event last year, very positive feedback because they appreciate us looking at the near term. Our investor base does appreciate the dividends that Chevron provides, right? And we have a long track record of that. So what we are telling them is we will still maintain the capital discipline. We will still return the dividends that our shareholders have come to expect of us and work to lower our carbon and to grow businesses that can help others lower their carbon. So I think we have not seen any change from our investors because that's a part of, as others mentioned up there, it's a part of our jobs to reach out and get our investors. They own this company, right? So we do get a lot of feedback from our investors in terms of what they want us to do. And so far, what our path has got a lot of approvals.
Jonah, you had mentioned journey, the word journey, and I heard it a couple of times. And I want to ask you about this because incorporating ESG into your processes or products or operations can be described as many things. Movement, initiative. I've read revolution. That must have been on some marketing blog. But in any case, why is the word journey so popular when used to describe this? I ask because to me, it sounds like a marketing buzzword. It sounds kind of soft. It sounds kind of wishful thinking, meandering. Oh, we're on a journey. It doesn't sound like a hard mandate. Why is journey the word of choice?
Well, I've always used that term myself because I think it's bringing the being authentic and being transparency to it. That no company is 100% sustainable. No person is. None of us will ever be 100% sustainable. So you will never get to a destination that's you can say, we've done it now. We're there. So it's a long journey. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And
you can't check it off as done.
You can't check it off as done. You're going to have milestones along the way, and Kraft Heinz, we're leading in some spaces and ESG, and we'll continue to do that. We want to do that, but there are going to be certain areas that you can say, yes, we've achieved this target, but then now what else can we do? How can we optimize this? And it's going to change also. The world's changing, things change. So for me, that's why it's a journey.
Good answer. Niki?
Totally agree with you. I mean, like you, I've been in this space for a long time now, and when I first started, I remembered we had a hard time getting the company to, and I wasn't at Unilever at this time, but to commit to a 25% reduction in your carbon emissions. Now everyone is setting net zero targets. This doesn't happen overnight, and it is a journey. I mean, the more companies that come online and sign up for these targets, the more we're going to do together. And I think that's what we're seeing now, is it really is a journey.
And Manish, you mentioned earlier that policy is driving a lot of the initiative, the journey. Talk about the one thing, and I'd like each of you to think about this. What's the one thing you want to see from regulators when it comes to sustainability that would make your job easier to drive growth?
So it's a great question. Policy, especially in this new energy space where the markets are very nascent, the technologies are immature, the customers are still making their mind. Policy has a big role to play. And we have been very vocal about the kind of things that we need the governments across the world, right? So we need an enabling mechanism where it may not make sense for a pure profit and loss, but we need to start investing in that space. That's why policy in this is very important, both from trying to help set up new businesses, as well as on the permitting side. I mean, right now there are parts of the world where it is economic to do lower carbon projects, but it's almost impossible to execute them because of the permitting. And Europe is a good example where we are not that active right now, but despite of the current crisis, they have been unable to process solar and wind applications because of the processes in place, right? So both on the policy side and on the regulatory side.
I totally agree with you, absolutely. I mean, we see with packaging, just trying to get infrastructure in place to meet our goals is almost impossible. And that's why things like EPR come into play, which is going to help with that.
EPR stands for?
Extended Producer Responsibility. So hopefully that will help create better infrastructure.
Standardization.
Exactly.
Jonah?
Yes, I would agree. So I think that policy in terms of, and regulation in terms of, can do a couple of things. To Manish's point, it can prevent a certain amount of environmental degradation, for example, but also then provide incentives in terms of the upside potential. So it can be very beneficial in that aspect. But also at the same time, we need regulators to really be mindful of any new. It's different. It's different in state to state. It's different globally. It's different from each ESG area, whether it's animal welfare or packaging. A lot of regulation on packaging, product health, and so forth. But they also need to be mindful in terms of allowing companies to be, we're big global companies. We can't turn on a dime like a big ship or something. So and allow us to embed, be an enabler of our ESG agenda. Allow us to embed it within our strategy and our plans, so that we have a look 3-5 years out, and also to give us enough guide rails and specifics around all these different areas that allow us to then address them and allow us to provide input back in so we can do it together. Because, to Niki's point, like on packaging, for example, we can design for recyclability. We can design compostable packaging, which we're doing all these things. But at the end of the day, we also need people. We need consumers to actually sort properly. We need municipalities to pick up.
Yeah.
And
Or it's only being done on one end and not the other.
Yes, and then the facilities that actually, with the technology, then also sort from there. So it's a collaborative effort.
All right, we'll try to make it a virtuous circle then. Thank you so much, Jonah Smith of Kraft Heinz, Niki King of Unilever North America, and Manish Misra of Chevron New Energies. Really appreciate it.